By her late teens, Gakira Barnes had risen through the ranks of Chicago's Gangster Disciples gang and amassed a massive online following by boasting about her gangbanger lifestyle. Although she was never officially charged, the teen was reported to have become an assassin for the gang and was active in their war with the rival Black Disciples. K.I., as Barnes was known, was alleged to have shot or killed over a dozen people. Her immersion into crime was believed to have deepened in 2011 when her friend and fellow gang member, Shondale Tuka Gregory, was gunned down by the Black Disciples as he was waiting for a bus. The rival gang subsequently posted a mocking photo of Gregory in his casket on social media, and the conflict escalated dramatically. The man suspected of carrying out the hit, 20-year-old O.D. Perry, was shot dead in retaliation later in the year, and it was widely believed that Barnes had pulled the trigger. The killing greatly increased her street credibility and status in the Gangster Disciples, and her online popularity exploded. Barnes became emblematic of the gangbanger lifestyle and fully embodied what it entailed, boasting about criminal activity and openly threatening people on social media. She was also adored by the local drill rap scene, appearing in videos with firearms and stacks of cash. Gang member turned activist Angalia Bianca said of Barnes, she was a real badass gangster girl, every bit the definition. Bianca added, for females, if you want to keep that kind of respect, she was never going to stop. Following Perry's murder, an all-out war broke out, with each gang renaming their territories in memory of their fallen friends. The Parkway Gardens, run by the Black Disciples, became known as O Block after O.D., while the Gangster Disciples renamed their territory Tukaville. A Black Disciple who went by Blood Money was gunned down in March of 2014, and Barnes was believed to have carried out the hit. The consequent demand for retaliation was reportedly exacerbated by Gangster Disciple Lil J, who posted a video to his Instagram of himself sipping on a red-colored liquid and captioning the clip, "Sipping on blood money." On April the 10th of 2014, Barnes tweeted out that she'd seen many of her friends end up in a casket, writing, "In the end, we die." The tweet would read as a premonition in hindsight. The following day, as she was walking to a friend's house, a hooded man approached Barnes and shot her 9 times. She crawled to the steps of a house nearby and lost consciousness. 17-year-old Barnes was rushed to a nearby hospital, where a few hours later, she was pronounced dead. The Black Disciple suspected to have carried out the hit was Davon Daquan Bennett. He was questioned by the police but not charged due to inconsistencies in witness testimonies. Bennett, professionally known as King Von, would become a preeminent figure in the drill rap genre, but his rise in fame paralleled his criminal proficiency. A 2023 YouTube documentary, which was viewed over 13 million times, identified him as rap's first serial killer. Bennett nonchalantly rapped about murdering at least 7 people, multiple times in his songs. He too was eventually gunned down in November of 2020 during a shootout involving his crew and that of fellow rapper Tyquane Terrell Bowman, better known as Quando Rondo. Number 8. Serenia Mixon and SMM. In April of 2022, law enforcement in Polk County, Florida, moved to arrest 41 members of the SMM, Sex Money Murder Gang, a subset of the United Blood Nation. SMM originated in the Bronx borough of New York City and was founded by Peter Pistol Pete Rollock in the mid-1990s. He went on to plead guilty to 6 killings and was sentenced to 123 years plus 2 life sentences without parole. From 2018 to 2022, the Florida branch of SMM was responsible for numerous crimes in Polk County, including home invasion robberies, drug offenses, assaults, attempted murder, and murder. The investigation into its activities involved multiple agencies and spanned over a year. Among those arrested was 22-year-old Serenia Mixon, whom the authorities claimed was at one point a rising star in the gang. During a recorded phone conversation with fellow SMM member Xavier Ulysses, they laid out a plan to kill a former affiliate. Mixon and Ulysses spoke in code, and the former claimed she would get permission from a higher-ranking member for the hit. Mixon would end up dodging the conspiracy to commit murder charge, while Ulysses pleaded guilty to the reduced conspiracy to commit aggravated battery charge. Mixon, who was also known as Baby Guns or Murder Bay, was identified as a secretary for the gang. The authorities believed that she'd lost favor leading up to her arrest because she was reportedly partying too much, drinking too much, and running her mouth too much. Sheriff Grady Judd, who led the Polk County Gang Task Force, reported that the other members didn't trust her because she was too wild. Judd went on to say, "Now you gotta be wild to be too wild for sex, money, murder." Another of Mixon's friends and fellow SMM members, Javarice Dexter Trammell, was arrested on murder charges. Trammell went by Maniac Rolex in tribute to the gang's founder, and he was reported to have robbed and gunned down a man by the name of Tyrell Bell on September the 14th of 2021. Number 7. Jamel Sanders and Rahel Kuya on May the 16th of 2022. Law enforcement responded to reports of a burning car near a golf course in the Bronx borough of New York City. Inside the flame-ravaged wreck, the NYPD found the charred remains of Jesse Perea and Nikki Huang, both in their early 20s. The former was a basketball player at Genese Community College in upstate New York, while the latter worked at the Wa Lung Kitchen, a Chinese restaurant owned by her family. Both were executed prior to the vehicle being set on fire. Investigators learned that the victims were caught up in the rivalry between the Up the Hill and Down the Hill gangs, hailing from opposite sides of Houston Street on the east side. Down the Hill members had reportedly mugged Huang of her purse in early May of 2022, and she sought justice by complaining to her friends in Up the Hill. A series of shootings and altercations followed. The violence culminated with Down the Hill grabbing Huang and Perea while they were out together in a Honda Accord owned by Perea's mother. They were driven to the Bronx and executed in the car before it was set ablaze. Perea wasn't involved in the conflict, and the authorities believed he was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. He'd known Huang since middle school and was reportedly giving her a lift. Perea was fatally shot in the head and chest, while Huang sustained lethal gunshot wounds to the head and neck after a year-long manhunt. 31-year-old Down the Hill affiliate Jamel Sanders was tracked down to a homeless shelter in the Bronx and arrested for the dual execution. He was charged with murder, manslaughter, robbery, grand larceny, kidnapping, and arson. In March of 2024, Rahel Kuya, another Down the Hill gangbanger, was arrested for his role in the incident. He was determined to have been at the scene when the victims were grabbed and provided his vehicle to be used as a getaway car. He was charged with 2 counts each of murder and manslaughter, as well as kidnapping, arson, robbery, and grand larceny. Number 6. Jeremy Jones and Jose Molina. Law enforcement in Suffolk County, New York arrested 2 self-admitted MS-13 gangbangers in mid-January of 2018. 27-year-old Jeremy Jones and Jose Molina, aged 20, entered a taxi at Babylon Long Island Railroad Station and asked to be taken to the Farmingdale train station. The duo then pulled out guns and robbed the unnamed driver of cash and jewelry. The victim was shaken up but physically unharmed, and he was able to call 911. Jones and Molina, who were both from Queens, fled and took the train to Babylon Station, where they were arrested. They were charged with first-degree robbery and 2 counts of second-degree criminal possession of a weapon. Jones, who had a tattoo of MS-13 across his forehead, had prior arrests, including one from 2012 in North Augusta, South Carolina. It stemmed from an incident in which he and 2 teens went on a rampage inside a local Walmart. They shoplifted from the store and Jones vandalized the bathroom by spray painting MS-13 related symbols all over the walls, mirror, and stalls. The trio's car was later pulled over in the area and they were taken into custody. Number 5. Emmanuel Santiago. In less than a year leading up to the spring of 2024, reputed Latin Kings gangbanger Emmanuel Santiago was repeatedly arrested and released without bail by law enforcement in New York City. By April of 2024, he had multiple open cases in the Bronx for charges that included weapons possession, intent to sell drugs, grand larceny, and burglary. In December of 2023, Santiago broke into a police vehicle and made off with gun belts and ammunition, a riot shield and baton, bulletproof vests, handcuffs, and mace. On April the 9th of 2024, he was finally held on a $20,000 cash bail for a gun charge that dated back to July of the previous year. A number of New York officers were critical of recently modified bail laws that had enabled Santiago and other repeat offenders to be released and add to their criminal records. The reforms eliminated cash bail for most non-violent felonies and misdemeanors. One officer told the New York Post, "Reformers think simply not jailing criminals is championing criminal justice reform, but it's not, especially if criminals keep committing the same crimes without any corrective action." Santiago had a plethora of past offenses to his name, at least 31 of which were domestic incidents involving assaults and threats against women. Number 4. Curtis Goad Jr. 45-year-old Curtis Goad Jr. has a criminal history spanning multiple states and dating back to the late 90s, when he was sentenced to prison time for a pair of burglaries. During the early 2000s, he was arrested numerous times in Oklahoma for domestic violence, and in 2002, he was sentenced to prison time on a drug charge. 2 years later, Goad was sentenced to 4 years in prison in New Mexico in yet another drug case. After serving his time, he moved to Brazos County, Texas, where he was arrested multiple times for domestic violence between 2008 and 2015. During that time, he became involved with the Texas Syndicate prison gang. Goad's most recent criminal case stems from a 2017 arrest for assaulting his wife. A judge ordered him to have no contact with the victim, but he violated the order twice in 2019 and was charged with continuous violation of a protective order or bond conditions. He was convicted of the charge and sentenced to 11 years in prison, with the judge imposing an enhanced punishment based on his criminal history. Number 3. Lorenzo Alexander Benitez. El Salvador man Lorenzo Alexander Benitez was indicted on May the 9th of 2024 for illegal re-entry of a removed alien into the US. Benitez was a member of MS-13, a gang that originated in Los Angeles in the 1980s from El Salvadoran immigrants. MS-13 rose to become one of the most feared and powerful criminal organizations in the US. Notorious for the ruthlessness of its members, the gang engaged in all manner of illegal activities, ranging from drug trafficking and people smuggling to kidnappings, home invasions, assaults and murder. Benitez's role in MS-13 was unclear, but like many other affiliates, he had extensive facial tattoos. They included, aside from gang-related references, skeletal features around his eyes, nose and mouth. He'd been previously deported in July of 2018 before he was caught in New Orleans in the spring of 2024. For the illegal re-entry, Benitez faced up to 2 years behind bars. Updates on his case from August of 2024 indicated that he'd pleaded guilty and his sentencing was scheduled for November the 7th. Today's topic was requested by Golden Knack and Ranger Jones 5531. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Rudeston Scott Ashley Antoine. In July of 2024, a 23-year-old gang member was arrested in Florida by officers from the Collier County Sheriff's Office. They reported that a raid of Rudiston Scott Ashley Antoine's Naples home produced enough fentanyl to kill 100,000 people. According to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, only 2 milligrams of the synthetic opioid represented a potentially lethal dose. Antoine was found to be in possession of almost 200 grams. Also discovered in his home were 218.5 grams of cocaine, almost 2 pounds of marijuana, and 9.5 grams of psilocybin mushrooms. The police additionally recovered an AR-15 rifle, which had previously been reported stolen in 2020 in Clewiston. Antoine was charged with multiple drug-related felonies, and the case was ongoing as of the latest updates. Sheriff Kevin Rambosk told the media, "With his arrest, we are continuing to send the message that deadly drugs like fentanyl and those who traffic it won't be tolerated in Collier County." The gang with which Antoine was affiliated wasn't specified. Collier County jail records indicated that he'd previously been arrested for gun and drug-related charges when he was in his late teens. These gangbangers got what was coming to them, but you definitely wouldn't want to be attacked by the most foolish-looking criminals. Right after number 1, we've got our previous release of When Goofy-ass looking criminals go wrong, in case you haven't seen it yet. Number 1. Raimundo Duran. On April the 22nd of 2024, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Deputy Samuel Aispuro was on his patrol motorcycle while stopped at a red light in West Covina. Without warning or provocation, the 20-year police force veteran was shot in the back. 43-year-old Aispuro was able to radio for help, but the gunman fled in the ambush's immediate aftermath. Given the location of the shot, the wound would have likely been fatal, but Aispuro's bulletproof vest caught the bullet. A massive manhunt was launched to track down the shooter. A few hours later, 47-year-old Raimundo Duran was arrested by the California Highway Patrol at the San Diego County Inspection Point on suspicion of driving under the influence and possession of a loaded firearm. Surveillance footage, witness statements, and a firearm recovered from his 2008 silver Toyota Camry linked Duran to the previous shooting. On April the 24th of 2024, he was charged with attempted first-degree murder of a police officer, assault on a police officer, being a felon in possession of a firearm, and the special allegation of intentional use of a firearm during the commission of a crime. During a press conference, Sheriff Robert Luna said that Duran was a known gang member but declined to name the gang. Luna noted he has a very extensive criminal history. He has a very violent history. In 2001, Duran was charged with murder but pleaded down to voluntary manslaughter and was given an 11-year sentence. While on parole in July of 2021, he led Covina police on a televised chase after fleeing the scene of a hit and run. He was stopped and taken into custody when pursuing law enforcement executed a pit maneuver. While on probation for that incident, he was caught with a firearm and ammunition. Duran was handed a 16-month sentence for that offense and additional 16 months for the previous evading arrest offense. It wasn't clear what had motivated Duran to ambush Aispuro during the most recent incident, but some speculated that the shooting stemmed from his hatred towards cops. If he were to be convicted on all his charges, Duran faced a sentence of life in prison. 38-year-old Indiana man Donald P. Murray was arrested by Terre Haute police on multiple occasions from 2019 to 2021 for similar offenses. Murray was first spotted driving without lights in late November of 2019. He evaded law enforcement but was apprehended on December the 3rd. He was held without bail on criminal recklessness and resisting law enforcement. 6 weeks later, he was released. But not long after that, Murray was again arrested after leading officers on a brief pursuit through several Indiana streets on February the 17th of 2020. This time, he was accused of resisting law enforcement, reckless driving, possession of methamphetamine, maintaining a common nuisance, and auto theft. He was held in lieu of a $15,000 bail. After his second arrest, Records indicated that Murray was jailed 5 more times for the same offenses. As of the latest updates, he'd been released on June the 29th of 2022 after serving 6 months behind bars. In light of his 7 arrests, we will refrain from making any snarky comments about the tattoo on his forehead. It does all the talking for itself. Number 11. Albert Lee Gardner. After serving a 9.5-year sentence for lewd and lascivious battery, 29-year-old Florida man Albert Lee Gardner was taken back into custody a day after his release. Gardner was released on July the 7th of 2023 and was required to wear a GPS tracking device. When his probation officer noticed that he'd been at a 7-Eleven in Brooksville for an unusual period of time, deputies were called to the location shortly before 2 a.m. on July the 8th. Gardner, however, was nowhere to be found. Only his ankle monitor was recovered in the store's trash can, according to the Hernando County Sheriff's Office. Subsequently, a call came in about a man who had overdosed less than a mile down the street. Authorities responded to the call and learned that it was Gardner who'd taken an unknown narcotic. Gardner was revived after being administered Narcan. When he was cleared at Bravera Health Brooksville, he was booked without bond and charged with violating his probation and tampering with an electronic monitoring device. Gardner was sporting some remarkable facial tattoos in his mugshot. Number 10. Mercy Mary Becerra and Johnny Lewis Hartley. A California couple who pleaded no contest to the death of a toddler was sentenced under a plea deal. 48-year-old Mercy Mary Becerra and 43-year-old Johnny Lewis Hartley, both from Whittier, crossed the border and entered Tijuana at the San Isidro land port of entry through a pedestrian lane on August 9th of 2016. When Mexican custom agents attempted to stop them, Becerra fled, but Hartley, who was carrying a duffel bag, was detained. Authorities did an X-ray of the bag and discovered a lifeless body inside. Shortly after the discovery, Becerra was also taken into custody. She and Hartley were later turned over to the San Diego officers and booked into jail on suspicion of murder. An autopsy determined that the body Hartley was carrying belonged to a girl who'd suffered malnutrition associated with chronic neglect before drowning. Further investigation determined that the victim was the daughter of a woman whom the couple had allegedly trafficked since November of 2012. Prosecutors said that Becerra and Hartley had seized the child and severely abused her from January of 2016 to August of the same year. The two were facing several charges, including murder and torture. On May the 18th of 2021, Becerra and Hartley pleaded no contest to involuntary manslaughter, child abuse, human trafficking of an adult, and criminal threats. The former was handed a 24-year state prison, while the latter was ordered to serve nearly 37 years behind bars. In addition, they were both ordered to register as offenders. They were ridiculed online for their looks during the duration and in the aftermath of their trial. Number 9. Michael Ruiz. Through facial tattoos, an Arizona man was identified as a suspect in an armed robbery that unfolded at a home improvement store in Phoenix on January the 30th of 2021. Shortly after 8 p.m., 2 male suspects entered the Home Depot store near Cave Creek and Bell Roads and selected numerous items. A witness observed both men exiting the store separately without paying and then coming back in together. The suspect with the face tattoos was then heard telling his accomplice something to the effect that there was no need to worry because he had a gun and would use it. That same suspect later walked back toward the exit of the store with a shopping cart full of items and the gun in his waistband. Approaching the exit, he told an employee that he was armed and would shoot them. A witness reported the incident to the police. Investigators talked to the witnesses and several others and viewed surveillance footage. They were able to identify the armed suspect as Michael Ruiz. The 32-year-old was tracked down near 29th Street and Bell Road on February the 21st. After his Miranda rights were read to him, Ruiz admitted that he'd been inside the Home Depot with another person whom he didn't identify. He said that he'd shoplifted from the store and that he was carrying a BB gun, which he didn't use or threaten anyone with. After his arrest, no further updates have been made to the public. Ruiz might want to consider wearing some form of disguise the next time he decides to rob a store. Number 8. Elisa Zebraski. Elisa Zebraski has previously appeared in one of our videos, but we'd like to include her again since she's in the process of yet another remarkable transformation. In June of 2018, the 27-year-old from Cleveland, Ohio, got the elaborate Day of the Dead tattoo on her face, which included a spider web on her forehead, as well as black shading around her eyes, nose, cheeks, and lips. In the same year, she was arrested at least 3 times. On her third arrest, she was taken into custody for theft and drug possession charges. Her mugshot, showing her heavily tattooed face, then went viral. After completing a court-ordered drug rehabilitation program, Zabrowski started undergoing a laser removal process in October of 2019. The treatment, which was a community outreach initiative by the Ink Initiative in Austin, Texas, required 12 sessions to carefully remove all the ink from her face. Despite having tattoos all over her body, Zabrowski apparently wanted to remove only the ones on her face and hands due to their association with her ex and the ridicule she had suffered online. She posted images of her tattoo removal journey on social media with support from her family and new partner, saying that she was in the healthiest relationship she'd ever been in. Number 7. Michael Carter. In Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, 36-year-old Michael Carter was arrested after causing a disturbance at a convenience store on December the 30th of 2015. Carter was initially seen strolling into a Whataburger wearing a cape and a mask with a toy gun tucked into his waistband. He subsequently entered a come-and-go convenience store located on Kenosha Street. When the female store manager asked him to leave, Carter refused and locked himself in the men's restroom, causing the manager to contact local police. According to the arrest affidavit, a responding officer repeatedly tried to get the man to come out. At one point, Carter opened the door and yelled obscenities at the officer. He was eventually taken into custody and booked in the Tulsa County Jail on a $500 bond in January. Carter pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge of obstructing a police officer and was sentenced to 18 days of incarceration. He was credited for the time he'd already served and was released. About a month later, on February the 5th, deputies were called to the 7,000 block of North Peoria Avenue to reports of a man pointing guns at motorists. 4 witnesses told authorities that they thought the guns were real and that they were going to be shot. Shortly after 11:30 p.m., they found Carter in possession of 3 plastic weapons, including an M16 style gun, a handgun, and a knife. Carter claimed that he was pointing the guns because he'd been jumped a few days prior. Carter was again booked into the Tulsa County Jail. He was held in lieu of $100,000 bail on 4 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. He does not look difficult to pick out in a crowd, and he might want to consider laying low for a while. Number 6. Michael Vines. In the wake of a car accident that took place in Greenville, South Carolina, the driver was caught in unlawful possession of a firearm. In June of 2018, Greenville police released a statement saying that 24-year-old Michael Vines crashed his Toyota Camry into a power pole. Responding firefighters noticed Vines tossing a weapon into the grass nearby. Police officers later recovered the gun, which was a loaded Smith & Wesson .38 caliber revolver. Vines, who appeared with a handgun tattoo across his forehead in his mugshot, had been federally prohibited from having a gun. He was consequently charged with unlawful carrying of a firearm as well as speeding and driving under a suspended license. It is unclear if having a handgun tattooed on your forehead counts as owning a firearm. Number 5. Baisley Morgan. A Las Vegas judge ordered that a Nevada man's racist tattoos be covered up throughout his robbery trial. In May of 2013, 21-year-old Baisley Morgan allegedly took a man's motorcycle at gunpoint. Days after the robbery, he murdered 75-year-old Jean Main during the course of a burglary on Green Pasture Avenue. On May the 30th, he was arrested and booked into the Clark County Detention Center on charges of murder, robbery, burglary, and kidnapping. Before he could be tried for the robbery charge, an entire group of potential jurors said in June of 2016 that they couldn't be impartial after seeing Morgan's tattoos. His tattoos, which included a swastika inside a clover under his eye and the word "baby Nazi" across his neck, were thus ordered to be concealed in an effort to get him a fair trial. Despite appearing in front of a new jury with a tattoo-free face, Morgan was convicted of robbery in August of the same year. 3 months later, he was handed a 3 to 9 year sentence. Later, in 2018, he pleaded guilty to the shooting death of Maine and was ordered to serve at least 44 years behind bars. Number 4. Charles Edward White Jr. On February the 3rd of 2016, Charles Edward White Jr. from La Follette, Tennessee, critically stabbed another man. Following an altercation, the 44-year-old used a knife to stab Jess Miller, aged 34. Police were called to the scene shortly before 7 p.m. and found Miller with severe knife wounds to his abdomen. He was airlifted to the University of Tennessee Trauma Center in Knoxville for treatment. The next day, White turned himself into authorities and was booked into Campbell County. He was facing charges of aggravated assault. Jail records indicated that White was sentenced to 6 years of incarceration. In his mugshot, the tattoos on Charles White's forehead and neck read "Psycho" and "Nazi." Number 3. Stetson Johnson. Oklahoma teen Stetson Johnson, who was accused of forcing himself upon 2 women, was beaten up and left unconscious with a tattoo that spelled "rapist" across his forehead. On April the 14th of 2011, the 18-year-old from Oklahoma City biked over to Midwest City to meet up with 25-year-old Kimberly Sue Vergara, whom he'd met through a friend and communicated with online. Johnson and Vergara seemingly clicked, and he spent the next few nights at her home. A couple of days later, Vergara left the house to see a tattoo artist by the name of Richard Lynn Dellert, leaving Johnson and her 33-year-old friend Lorena Amanda Hodges behind at her home. Not long after she left, Vergara received a call from Hodges, who claimed that Johnson had tried to assault her. Vergara then claimed that he had assaulted her as well. Why Vergara had allowed Johnson to stay after this alleged assault is unclear. Vergara then returned to Midwest City with Dellert, and along with Johnson and 21-year-old Zachary Provence, the 4 planned to punish Johnson. At around midnight on April the 17th, the group restrained Johnson with duct tape, and Dellert tattooed the words "rapist" and "I like little boys" on his forehead and chest respectively. After inking him, Johnson was thrown to the ground and kicked in the face several times by Dellert and Provence, while the 2 women took turns using a stun gun on his genitals. The group then put Johnson in a car and transported him to Eagle Lake in Del City, where they beat him senseless with a baseball bat. The group then left, and Johnson eventually woke up and walked to a nearby mobile home park, where a resident called the police. Johnson, whose mother claimed had the mental capacity of a 6th grader, was then taken to the hospital. He was placed in the intensive care unit for treatment of a fractured skull, a broken nose, and other wounds. Vergara, Hodges, Dellert, and Provence were later arrested and held without bail. During a hearing in Oklahoma County District Court in June, all 4 pleaded guilty to kidnapping and maiming Johnson. Additionally, Vergara, Hodges, and Provence pleaded guilty to assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. Dellert entered a no-contest plea to the assault and battery charges, but admitted to tattooing Johnson. Dellert and Provence were each sentenced to 10 years in prison, followed by 10 years of probation. Vergara and Hodges were each sentenced to 5 years behind bars, followed by 5 years of probation. Number 2. Justin M. DiCaprio. At around 12:15 p.m. on September the 9th of 2020, a 911 dispatcher received a call about a man running in Auburn, New York, wearing an orange jumpsuit issued to inmates at the Cayuga County Jail. The jail in question was immediately put on lockdown, and after a head count, all inmates were accounted for. Auburn police later located the man, Justin M. DiCaprio, wearing the orange jumpsuit on Grant Avenue. Officers confirmed that the clothing was conspicuously marked and unmistakable as jail-issued clothing. According to a sheriff's office press release, the 29-year-old was arrested and charged with possession of stolen property. He was transported to the Cayuga County Public Safety Building, where he was processed and released on an appearance ticket. DiCaprio couldn't explain why he was in possession of the uniform, but records indicated that he'd previously been an inmate at the jail. Number 1. Dominic Santana. 61-year-old anti-Trump protester Dominic Santana was arrested after running in front of the former president's motorcade on the afternoon of June the 13th of 2023. As Trump departed federal court, his motorcade was traveling down a street in Miami, Florida, where supporters and protesters were lined up on both sides. Santana, who was wearing a pinstripe prison uniform, rushed to the former president's vehicle and showed a sign that read, "Lock him up." Agents immediately grabbed Santana and pushed him back on the sidewalk, where he was arrested on misdemeanor charges. According to the Daily Mail, Santana claimed that he only ran into the road to escape from Trump supporters who were physically assaulting him. Thanks for watching. Would you rather join a biker gang or a fraternity or sorority? Let us know in the comments section below.